In this video, we're going to be creating a blogs application where we can upload blogs. So we're going to be using another app called Postman, which allows us to send API requests. And the reason that we're going to be doing this is that so that we don't have to make an admin page where you will have to log in and do all that kind of stuff. So this just saves us a lot of time. And in later on projects, we are going to be doing that. But since this is a very basic project, we won't be doing it. But here we have an API request. I'm going to press on send. If we reload, we're going to have a new one. So my morning routine number 2. And if we do want to open them, we can also do that. So press on read more. Here's going to be a basic blog. Of course, you can style this however you want to after you finish this video, but we can do a lot more. So we can also delete, change the sky to delete, press on send, blog deleted successfully. So if we reload, the newest blog has been deleted successfully. And also in the database, we can see that all of the blogs are stored here. So if you delete or add anything, of course, everything is going to change here too. So make sure to watch this whole video to learn how to do all of that. And before we get started, make sure to like this video, subscribe to not miss upcoming content like this. Comment down below if you have any questions or if you have anything that you would like to say during the video. But now, let's get started. The first thing that we're going to want to do is go to our desktop, right click anywhere, and open in terminal. I'm gonna zoom in and we're gonna run npx create next app at latest. I'm not sure why I keep messing up, but we're gonna name this blogs app and press on enter. Here we're gonna say no to TypeScript, yes to ESLint, yes to tailwind CSS, no to source directory, yes to app router, and no to import alias. And once that's done, we're gonna write code and we're gonna go to the blogs app folder and press on enter. And what that should do is open VS Code in that terminal. So here we're going to have our app folder. And now make sure you go down in the details and now go to the details down below. Open the GitHub repository to this project and we're going to go to the app, and inside of here we're going to go to the globals.css file, copy everything, and then we're going to paste it right over here. Now we're going to go to our tailwind.config file. So we're going to go to tailwindconfig.js and copy all of those colors. Now they're going to go under here, and I'm going to remove that space over there, but we're going to actually go ahead and install a few dependencies. So we're going to run npm install. First one will be Mongoose, second one will be Axios, and then also Moment. Let's go ahead and install all of them. And that should be it. So if we run npm run dev, so right over here, we can see that we're going to have our basic Next.js template here. So now we can get started. And the first thing that we're going to do is set up our MongoDB connection so that we don't have to do it later. The first thing that we're going to do is create a folder called models where the blog model is going to be. So we're going to create a file called blog model. And there shouldn't be a period here, so blog model.js, just like that. And here we're going to end start by importing Mongoose from Mongoose, just like that. And we're going to create a Mongoose schema here. And at the end, the actual blog model is going to be created. So let's create a blog schema right here, which is going to be mongoose.schema. And here we're going to have all the different variables and the type of variables that we're going to have here. So we're going to have a title, which is going to be a string. We're also going to have content. You can also set this to be description. It doesn't matter, but you have to know what this is set to. Then we're going to have a created at, which is going to have a type of date. And the nice thing about this is that we can actually set the default here to be set to the date that it gets created at. And if you want to, you can add more values like an author or maybe even an image, but this is just a very basic video so that you get to learn how to use databases with Next.js. So here we're going to create a blog model, which is going to equal to mongoose.model.blogs. And what this does is it looks if the actual database has a blogs collection inside. But then if it doesn't, we're going to create one. So mongoose.model, and we're going to call this blogs. And blogs is going to be using the blog schema that we have over here. So last thing to do is export this. So export default blog. And this part should be done now. So now we have to make another folder called dbconfig. And here we're going to be connecting to the database. I'm going to fix the spelling mistake here. So dbconfig. And here we're going to create a file called index.js where all of the interesting stuff is going to happen. So let's start by importing Mongoose again from Mongoose. And now we're going to export an async function, which we're going to call connect. And here we're going to start by using a try and catch method so that if we get an error, the whole program doesn't stop. And in here, I'm already getting suggestions, but we're going to write this by ourselves. So mongoose.connect. And here's going to be the URL that we're going to be using. So for now, we're just going to write process.environment.mongo URI instead of URL. And it's not going to work right now, but again, we're going to connect this later. I'm just going to write the code so that this part is going to be done. But now we're going to create a connection variable, which is going to be equal to mongoose.connection. And now that we have that, we can use the connection variable. And so once it's on, connected, we can run a callback function, which is going to console log that we're connected to the database. And I'm going to have to fix this right here. So there, console log. And you can also do other stuff once it's connected, but we're not really going to do anything. Then we're also going to have connection.onError. Here we're going to get the error. And all that we're going to do is console log the error that we get. And since we're actually going to do another thing here, we're going to write the error. And then at the very end, we're going to write process.exit, which is going to exit out of the program once we get an error. So now that we have this done, go ahead and open your Chrome browser and go to mongodb.com and sign in or sign up if you don't have an account. And then of course deploy a cluster. And if you don't already have this set up, then make sure that you check out my previous video on the Mongoose, on how Mongoose works, because we set up an account here and create a cluster. So if you don't have this set up, then make sure that you check out that video on how to set this up. But now what we're going to do is go to database, browse collections, and here we should already have some stuff. So Mongoose DB and then the user stuff that we have from the previous video, but we can of course create a new database. So let's go ahead and press on that. We're going to call this blogsdb and the collection name should be blog. Now we're going to press on create. And now that it's created, we're going to go back to database, connect, drivers, and here we have the npm install MongoDB, but we're using Mongoose, so we don't actually need this. So we're going to go ahead and actually copy this and go back to VS Code. Here we're going to create an environment file, so .env, and I'm going to go over this file in just a second, but we call this Mongo URI. If I'm not wrong, let's see, MongoDB URI. So I'm just going to write this in here. And then we're going to, and then we should copy and paste this in there. So I'm going to go back in here, paste this in here. And here I'm just going to change this a bit. So I'm going to actually go back in here, go to database access, admin. I don't actually remember the passwords. I'm going to create a new one again, copy, update user. And here I'm going to paste in the password. This is exactly what I should be doing too. And I'm going to go over this just in case you have created everything and you haven't watched my previous videos. So this MongoDB URI is going to be the URL from where we're going to access the database. And here we have to paste in the username. So if I go back in here, we can see that there's database access. If you don't have a user, you're going to want to go ahead and create one. This is going to be the name, so you can call this guy whatever you want. Make your own password and make sure that the built-in role is actually set to Atlas admin so that you can remove, delete, add, or really do anything you want with the database. And once you have that, if you remember the URL that we copied, and here you're going to have the username. So in my case, it's going to be admin and then the password that you have. Now we're going to actually remove this right here, and the name of the collection that we had was blogsdb, so we're going to write blogsdb, and this should work, but I'm just going to go back in here and make sure that this is exactly what we called it. So blogsdb, there it is, and now it should work if we try to connect to it, but we first have to make an API here that actually does that. But before we do that, I'm going to go over what the environment file does real quick so that you have basic knowledge of it. So here's a pretty basic explanation of what it is. It's used in production development, build pipeline, and so on. And it's a file used to store sensitive data, such as passwords, API credentials, and other information that should not be written directly in code. So think of it as a save file, because if we actually go back in here, take a look in here, we can see that the .environment file is going to be in gitignore. And for those of you that don't know, the gitignore file is used for GitHub. So whenever you create a repository and then push your whole project, whatever is in this gitignore file doesn't go to your repository. So if we take a look, we have the node modules here. And if I look for them here, we can see that the dependencies, node modules, they don't get pushed into the repository, which is why you have to write npm install every time you clone a new repository, because if they click at the node modules, there's a bunch of different folders here, which would take a lot of space in the repository when you don't actually really need it. It's only really useful for whenever you need to run the project, which is why you run the npm install again every time you clone a repository. But hopefully the environment file makes sense now. I forgot to mention that if you want to have your environment file in the gitignore, then you have to write .env under the local environment files. The one that's up there is for .env local, but we have created an env file, so if you want, you can add that in there too. But now let's go over the page.js real quick. So the first thing that we're going to do is change this guy to a main, and we're going to start by adding a few classes. So class name. First class is going to be flex call, and then we're going to set the items to be centered, justify between, and we're going to add a padding of 24. And here we're going to have a div. So class name, not sure what's going on here, but class name, we're going to set the max width to be screen LG. We're going to also set the items to be center in here, and we're also going to justify center, and we're going to set the text to be small. Inside of here, we're going to run a maps method for all of the different blocks that we're going to have. So let's first create a blog down here. Const blog. So blog. Here we're going to return our basic blog. So we're going to start with a div, of course, with a few class names. So the first one will be max width to be screen. The background will be secondary, rounded will be large. We're going to add a shadow, and we're also going to set padding top and bottom to be 4. And this background secondary comes from the tailwind file, so right over here. So it's a custom color. But then we're going to have a div with a padding of 5. Inside of this div, we're going to have another div with a class name of margin bottom 3. And here we're going to have a span, which will be the actual title. So text 3XL, font bold. We're going to set tracking tight. We're going to set tracking to be tight. Margin bottom will be 1, and set is going to be background. For now, we're just going to title in here. And so under this span, we're going to have another span, which is going to be the actual content of the blog. So text will be XL, tracking is going to be tight, margin bottom will be 1, text is going to be accent, and we're going to write float end just like that. And here we're going to have the description, and under the title we're going to have the date. So span class text will be XL, tracking will be tight, margin bottom 1, text is going to be ascent, and float will be end. Here we will have the date, and then we're going to have an HR under all of that with a few classes. So class name, this will just be border ascent, just like that. Under all of that, we're going to have a paragraph with all of the content, but of course we're going to have some class names. So first one will be margin bottom of 3, font will be normal, text will be ascent, and here we're going to write some stuff. So I'm not sure if we can use lorem. We can. And then at the end we can have a read more, but we're going to do that at the very end. For now we're going to have an anchor tag. So anchor tag href is just going to be blank. Here we're going to write read more, and this is pretty much just going to look like a button. So class name. And let's take a look at some of the classes. So inline flex. Then we have items center. px is going to be 3, py is going to be 2, text will be small, font is going to be medium, text will be center, the text is going to be set to color, so text color, background will be background, rounded is going to be large, and so now on hover, we're going to change the background to be primary. And then again on hover, we're going to change the text to be background. And here, we're going to have an SVG. And I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this from the GitHub repository. And you can do the exact same thing, because it's going to be an arrow. And let's take a look at what that would actually look like. So blog, just like that. Let's run the programs. So npm run dev, wait for it to start. And now that it's open, we can see one of the blogs. When we hover it, it's going to have pretty nice hover animation. The date, here is going to be the content and the title. Now we actually have to go and create a navbar, which is pretty funny that I forgot to go over at the very start. So let's go ahead and make a components folder. Here we're going to have navbar.js, and we're also going to have a blog.js. So if we go in here, we can go ahead and actually just cut the blog out of here. Go to the blog, paste it. And here at the very bottom, we're going to export default log, just like that. Let's go into components and create an index.js file. Here we're going to import blog from blog. And we're going to export blog just like this. So if we go in page.js, and now we're not going to have any errors. Let's go back in the index.js file and also import the navbar, which we don't have yet, but we're going to do that. Navbar, and then the blog. So in the navbar here, let's write const navbar. And at the very bottom, we're going to export it just like that. And the navbar is going to be pretty simple. So we're going to have a nav with a few class names. Class name. First one will be background of primary. We're going to have a px of 2 and font of medium. And this navbar is not going to be responsive because, again, this is just a very simple website. If you do want to make this responsive, of course, you're welcome to. So I'm going to create a div over here with a class name of mx of auto, max width of 7xl, px of 2, and then we're going to create another div in here with a class name of relative. Let's fix this. Relative flex, and then height of 16. Items are going to be center, and also justify between. Then we're going to have another div. So div with the class name of flex, flex1, items center, justify center. and then another div inside. So div, and we're gonna write class name flex and then space x of 4. And here we're gonna have all of the links. So first we're gonna create a variable called navigation, which is going to be an array of objects. So the name of the first one will be blogs. And that's pretty much all that you're gonna need. So href current, so current will be true. And then target will be self, and you're gonna see why we're doing all of this, self. And since it's a blogs website, you would have different links, so maybe an about page if you really wanted to, but of course this video is strictly on showing you how to have a database and a website work together. So I'm just going to link this to other stuff. So I'm just going to have my projects page. I'm going to copy the link here. So the href will be this, the current will be false, and then target will be blank, which will open a new page. Then I'm going to have a contact page, which is just going to be my link tree. So do that. Current will be false, and it's also going to be blank. Now in here, we're going to run a map method. So navigation dot map. We're going to call this item, and let's use round brackets. So we're going to have an anchor tag. The key will be item dot name. Then the href will be item.href. The target will be item.target, and then the class name, so class name. And so I just realized that this class names was actually a function that I used in my previous blogs project. So we're not going to create it. We're just going to write another class name, comment this out, and we're going to write this just a bit differently. So here we're going to write the basic styles that they're both going to have. And then if items.current is true, then we're going to write all of this. So let's write it right over here. So there it is. That should work now. And I also realized something pretty funny. So we do need a return here, or else nothing will be shown. So let's do that. Now, if we go to the layout, we should be able to import it. So import navbar from components, and we can put it right over here. And we do have to run the server, so npm run dev. Now, if we reload, we should see the navbar. So there it is, and then the title. For me, again, if I go to the project, this is my project that I've done. And then same goes for contact. This is my link tree, so you can really link this to whatever you want, but let's actually go back, go to the page and write a bunch of different blogs here. And this is what it would pretty much look like if we had a bunch of different blogs. So the main way in which we're going to be adding blogs is by using a tool called Postman, which is a global software company that offers API platform for developers to do different stuff. So what it does is it pretty much just sends API requests to the URL that we're going to be providing it with. And then of course you can do anything that you want. So go ahead and press on Postman API platform, go to pricing, and then get started. Create your account, download everything. And this is what it should look like. So before you get started, make sure that you also log in or make an account in here, or else it's not going to work. We don't really have anything right now, so let's go back to VS Code and actually create an API. So inside of the APIs folders, we're going to create another folder called blogs. Inside of blogs, let's have a folder which will add a new blog. So add, and this should be a folder, not a file. So let's fix that. Blogs add. We're going to have a route.js file. We're going to create an async function. So const, and this will be post because we're posting a new blog. So async. Here we're going to get a request and response, but we're only going to use the request. Then we're going to have a try and catch method over here, error, and then we're going to console log the error. Of course, we need to import next response. And there's going to be two new things that we are also going to import. So connect from the database. This is finally something that we're going to be using from dbconfig. Make sure it's from here. We're also going to import blog from the model's blog model and make sure that you have the exact imports as I do, or else there's a high chance you're going to get an error. But let's go ahead and have a variable called data, which is going to await a JSON request. And let's console log it to see if it works. Then we're just going to return a basic next response with a message of blog added successfully, which of course we haven't really added anything, but this is just to see if this works. So to test it out, make sure that your server is running. I'm going to go back to Postman. Let's full screen everything, and we're going to press on this plus icon. We're going to change this to post because that's the method that we're going to be using. And I have my previous history. I was testing some stuff, but we're going to start writing localhost 3000. And then we're going to go to API blogs and then add. And so API blogs add is exactly what we have here. So API blogs and add is the final folder. So I'm going to make a new file here just to see API blogs and add, and then the route.js file is inside of the add folder. And if you remember when we were fetching stuff in the Next.js crash course, we would write fetch this and that, and then the route would be the API folder and the path where the API was at. So Postman is the exact same thing, but now we're going to go to body. We're going to choose raw, and then this is going to be your basic JSON format. Here we can write curly brackets, which would be an object, and if we write title, set this to title, and then whatever you want, and press on send. We should get a response with a message of blog added successfully and success of true, which is exactly what we should have in here. So if we go to route.js, we can see that the message is blog added successfully and success is true. And we're also console logging the title right over here. And again, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but we're not going to have a page to actually add a new post, because then we would also have to make a login page and maybe even a sign up page. And then in the back end, we're also, or the database, we're also going to have to keep a user admin and that kind of stuff. So that's why using Postman is going to save us a lot of time. But in our Postman, whenever we actually try to add something, so in the blogs add, anyone could really do this. So let's say your website was up and they were using Postman and they knew the URL to the API and they sent a post request over here, they would get a blog added successfully. But how do we actually make it a little bit more private so that only you or people that know a certain code or a key could do this? Well, we can go back to our env file and make a secret key or some sort of key. So I'm just going to call this blog key, and we're going to set this to maybe some sort of password or really anything that you want it to be. So for example, I'm going to call this my blog key, and inside of the route over here, where we get our data, before we check if it's valid or anything, we can check if we have data.key. So if no data.key, then we're going to return a next response with acquired data missing. And then we can say the title, content, and then also the key. And since we have that, let's also write no data.title and data.content and also data.key. Then we're going to do that. And so if we get past this, that means that we have a title, content, and key. So then in here, we're going to check if data.key doesn't equal to process.env.api key, and I'm going to rename this to API key, just like this. Copy this, go back in here, and I'm going to fix this too. So process.env.api key. Then we're also going to return a next response with invalid key. And after all of that, let's create a blog. So blog, which would be new blog, where the title be data.title, content is going to be data.content, and at the very end, let's console log it just to make sure that all of this works. So I'm going to pull up the terminal. There it is. Let's open Postman. If we send a request, we can see that we're getting an error. And that's because inside of our blog model over here, this should be models instead of model. Let's try this again. So I'm going to go back to Postman, send a request, and there it is. We're going to get a message of invalid key, success was false, and we are getting this console log. So let's remove that and try again. Now we should get absolutely nothing in here, and there it is, invalid key, and so on. So let's add a key just to see if it works now. And the key that we had is blog my key. Of course, you can set that to whatever you want. Let's see if we get anything else now. So blog added successfully, but we haven't had content inside of the key. And so for some reason, I forgot to add or in here. So or, and let's see if that would work now. So since we don't have the content, we should have required data missing. There we go. But now at the very bottom, if we add content, set this to, let's just say content, and then whatever we want, and now we press on send, we're going to get blog added successfully and a success if true. We can also put the actual blog in here, but now let's actually save it in the database. So to do that, we can write await blog.save, and now that should be saved in the database next time we send an API request to blogs and an add. One quick thing we forgot to add was at the very top, we have to connect to the DB for this to actually work. So connect at the very top here. And then here we also have to return a next response that we have an error. But now I have the DB opened over here. But let's go back to VS Code and send a request. So let's wait a little bit. There's going to be our post, so I'm going to make this larger. Blog added successfully, success of true. Here's going to be our block. It added an ID also. Here's the created at with when it was created, content, and then title. But now if we go to the MongoDB Atlas, refresh, we can see that inside of the blog we don't have anything because it created a new one, which is called blogs. So it's going to be inside of the blocks here. And here's going to be our blog. So we have successfully created a blog with Mongoose inside of Next.js. And now that we actually have some data in our database, as we can see over here, let's go ahead and make an API endpoint to actually get that data from the database. So let's make a new folder inside of blogs over here. We're going to call it get. I'm going to copy the route.js and move it to the get folder. So there it is. Rename it to route.js. And we're going to move all of this and change the method from post to get also. And there's not really much to do here. We're already connected to the database, and the only thing that's left to do is find anything that we would have inside of the blog. So let's go ahead and write const blogs equal to await blog.find. And every time that we actually add data, the newer data would go below the data that was created before. So this would be the first one. If we add a new one, it's going to be under that. But we want to display the blogs that were uploaded the latest. So we have to sort them by using the sorting method. So in here, we're going to write dot sort, and we're going to use created at, and we're going to write -1. And we're going to see how this works in a bit. But let's just go ahead and actually console log blogs and see if this works. I'm gonna run npm run dev to start the server, go back to Postman. We're gonna change the method to get, and this is gonna change also to get. And here we don't actually have blog, but we have blogs, so we're gonna change that. And let's send a request and see if we get anything back. So inside of the cookies, body, so there it is. We're gonna have our blogs with the current blog, and we can change the message. So we're gonna change this to blogs fetched successfully. Let's also go ahead and create a new one. So we're gonna go to add, change this to post. The key is gonna stay the same. Title, I'm just gonna write some other stuff in here. Send. So there it is, success true. Let's go back to get, and now if we press on send, we can see that we're going to be getting 2 posts, and the new one that we just created is going to be at the very top because we sorted it. So let's go back to VS Code and remove the sort to see what that would look like. So we can see that the one with the title having less characters is at the very top because that's the latest one that we created, as we can see over here. But if we try to run this again, we can see that it's going to be at the very bottom now. So this right here, because we're not using the sort anymore. So we can go back and add the sort function or method back, and we're gonna move the console log here, pass in the blogs, go back to the page.js file. Here we're gonna write use client because we're gonna be using some hooks. So import use state, and then we're also going to be using use effect. So let's go ahead and import those two. Our first use state will be blogs, set blogs, and then the next one will be loading, and then also set loading. Let's go ahead and actually make a function that gets all the blogs, and this will be an async function. So blogs async. Here we're going to have a try and catch in case we get any errors. So error, we're going to console log it in here. Console log, so log error. And now instead of using fetch, so instead of writing const response await fetch and then writing .json and all that to convert it back, we're going to use Axios. So import Axios, and now we're going to write await Axios.get, and this is going to be a lot easier. So we can just write HTTPS, or not S, but HTTP localhost 3000, and then the route will be to API blogs and then get. Now let's go ahead and set blogs to be response.data, and we're also going to be setting loading to false. So here we're going to check if blogs, then we're going to run blogs.map blog, and we're going to have our blog with the key of blog.id, and then this is going to change to .blog. Let's see if this worked now. So let's go back in here, and we're not really getting anything. So there's nothing in here because we're not actually running the get blogs here. So we're going to write use effect, and then we're going to run the get blogs function over here. Go back here, blogs.map is not a function. So I'm just going to move this and console log blogs to see if we get anything there. Inspect, and here it is. So for some reason, this is what it ended up looking like. So we have to go back in here, .response.data.blogs. Hopefully this will work now. So reload, inspect this again, and here are going to be the blogs. So I'm going to uncomment this code, and if we go back, we can see that we get 2 blogs, and we have to write the data now inside of them. So here we're going to be getting the title, content, and then also created at. The title will change to title. Same goes with date, created at. And then for content, this will change to content. And now this is what we end up with. And they are pretty small right now, but we'll fix that later. So we're just going to zoom in for now. And let's actually work on the time because that's not really what we want to see. So let's go back to the blog. And here we're going to import moment from moment. And then we're going to set a variable date, which will be moment, and then create it at. Then we're going to take that date. So formatted date. And that will be date. And we're going to write format this string right here. And so now we go back down to the created at, and we're going to write formatted date. If we reload, this is what it's going to look like. So in my case, it will be October 13th, 2024. And let's do one more thing, and that would be to add a loader whenever the information is still loading. So go back to page.js, and inside of here, we're going to write loading, question mark. So if it's loading, we're just going to write div for now. Else, we're going to have this. Or actually, let's remove this guy from here. Also, we're just going to have an h1 that's going to say blogs. Class name, so class name of text. Let's change this guy to 6XL, font bold, text primary, font of sans, and Y of 10, and then also text center, just like that. So if we go in here, this is what it's going to look like. Then while it's loading, inside of this div, we're going to add a loading animation. So we're going to have a div here that's going to center everything. So fixed, grid, and then place items center, h of screen, and then top of 0. And then in here, we're just going to write div with a class of loader. So if we go back in here and reload, we're going to see that loader at the very top. And to fix that, we're going to change this from center to between. So reload, still at the very top. And this also has to change. So that's spelling mistake. So reload again. So now we have a pretty cool loading animation. But now let's actually go back to the blog.js. I forgot to add a text of Excel in here. Now it's going to be a little bit larger, and I'm going to try to fix the width here because my biggest guess right now is that with the new version, they have added something that for some reason is different with the styles from the previous blog website that I made, because the page.js is really similar. So page.js, we can actually compare it. So I'm gonna make this a little bit larger, close this, and we can see that all the styles here are the same, but I have a Z of 10. Maybe that will change something, which really shouldn't do much, but we can see that it's pretty much just the same thing. So let's go back in here, reload. We can see that that didn't help, so I'm going to try and fix it and come back to you guys. And after some time, I think I found a solution. So I'm going to add a width of full here. Let's see if that changed anything. So there it is. Now it's a lot larger, and we can actually change the sizing a little bit, make it even larger, the text and everything else. So let's go back in here, go to the blog, and we're going to start with the title. So maybe 4XL, change this guy to 2XL, and then let's see if there's anything else. That's the format to date, so the content will be 2XL also. Hopefully that will work. So go back, everything is a little bit more larger. And of course, if you have more content, it's going to look a little bit better. So go back in here, I'm just going to write lorem and copy this, or even cut it out. Go to postman, and then we're going to set the title to be something random. So let's just say my little story. Doesn't really matter what you're going to write here. And now I'm going to create another basic post. So send, blog added successfully. So if we go in here and reload, we're going to have a new blog, and for some reason it's going to be in the middle now. And funny enough, I just realized that there's a better method for this. So if we go back, we can see that my little story is going to be in the middle, even though it's the newest blog that I have added. So to fix it, we can just write reverse like this, make sure that there is round brackets and the way block.find dot reverse. And if we go back and reload, we can see that now my little story is going to be at the very top. So we can try and adding another one, my newest story. Let's send it, reload. And now we can see that my newest story is going to be at the very top. Let's also remove the padding here. So let's just set padding top to be 0. And that would look a lot nicer. So go back in here, page, we're going to set PT to 0, reload. Now it looks a lot nicer. Let's also change the styles for the navbar, make it a little bit larger. So navbar, and in here, let's just write text Excel just to make them a little bit larger. And let's also add a padding of 1, or maybe even 2. So there we go. And this is pretty much it. So we can, and one more thing, that would be with the README. It's a little bit too small. So go back to the blog, find the README. So it's right over here. We're going to set the text to be 2XL. Maybe not 2XL, but large at least. So text LG. So there it is. And now we have to do 2 more things. So we need to delete any blogs that we want, or we should also be able to read more. So we're going to have a character limit here so that if they wanted to read more, they can just press on this and then it would open a full blog. So let's work on the API route for delete. I'm going to copy this, paste it in the delete. This is going to change to delete. And here we're going to be getting data, which will be await request.json. Then we're going to check if no data dot. For some reason, the video cut out after that, and I only realized it now while editing. So it's too late to fix that, but make sure you go ahead and copy those two if statements, and then the await blog.find by ID and delete, which will find the blog and delete it using the ID, and then of course fix the next responses. And so if you want to, you can have an if statement here that checks if there's a blog if there's a blog with that ID, and there's different ways to do that. So you can make a variable for blog, and if it exists, then you can delete it by writing await blog.delete or stuff like that. But now if we try to change this a bit, so I'm gonna put some random strings here, press on send, we're gonna get something went wrong, and of course we're gonna get all of this console log error. So you can comment this out if you don't want this, but we can also change something went wrong to, let's just say, to blog deletion failed, run that again, blog deletion failed, and so on. So this is pretty much all the API keys that we're going to have. If you want to, you can have one that will edit stuff. So you're going to need the ID and what you want to edit it with, and so on. So you can do that as a self-challenge to see if you're capable of doing that. But right now, we need to work on read more because it doesn't currently do anything. And one funny thing is I realized that I did kind of just lie right now because we're going to have another API endpoint. So let's go ahead and create it. Call this one 1 because we're going to be getting one blog instead of many. So we're going to remove this and we're going to be getting data, which will be request.json. And in this data, we're going to have a title. So if we're not getting a title, so data.title, then we're going to return it next response. I'm going to remove this guy right here, call it blog. But then if we're getting a title, then we're going to write blog await blog dot find one, where the title equals data.title. If no blog, then we're going to return blog not found. And then at the very end, if the blog was actually found, let's console log it and here. And we're also going to be passing it, so blog fetch successfully, success is true. We're gonna go in here, change this to get, and then this will be get. I'm gonna copy the title of this guy, change this to 1, and we should be having a title in here. Something went wrong, so let's see. Get 1, we need a title. So let's console log data over here, and we are getting a huge fat error for some reason. So this guy is a get. Unexpected end of JSON input. Let's change this to post, and this might actually be the reason why it didn't work. So there it is. And so I was talking about this before. If you are actually sending in data, then this will be a post, even if you're receiving something. So make sure that you always keep that in mind. I forgot to change that because I copied it from here. So make sure that you always remember that. But now just restart the server because there's too many errors and I don't like seeing them. So let's send this guy again. And so here it is. This is going to be the data. And then this is the post that we just found. So this part is working. And the reason that we don't need a, let's go back here. The reason that we don't need a key, API key, is because we're going to be sending this from the actual website. So before we do that, I'm just going to close all of this. We're going to go to the blog.js. And in the href, what we're going to do is have a special one for every single blog. So blog, and then the href will be dependent on the title. So it will be the title, but we're going to be replacing any spaces. So over here, there's 2 spaces over here, but we're going to be replacing them with a hyphen. So to do that, we're going to write this right here. So G and hyphen. Make sure that you copy everything exactly like I did, or else it will be wrong. Go back in here, reload, let's inspect this, and so there it is. And so for the read more, when you press on it, you can have a model that will open up and give you the full blog, but I want to work on special routes, which we haven't really done. So we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this guy blog, and in this blog, it's going to have another folder with square bracket title, and this title will be like an ID. So we're going to write page.js, and here we're going to start by writing use client, and then we're going to have a const home function. Here we're going to return a main, element with a few classes. So flex, flex call, items, center, justify between, padding of 24, just like that. Let's create a loading hook. So we're going to import use state and then also use effect. And in here, we're going to have a hook for blog, set blog, and then also loading and set loading. Over here, we're going to get log, which will be an async function. And I just remembered that we are going to have another API endpoint. So I did lie about the deleting one being the last one. So here we're going to write const response, which will be await Axios, which we have to import, .get, and then set blog to be response.data.blog, set loading to false. Here we're going to have a use effect, and then let's finish this. So we're going to have loading. If loading is equal to true, we're going to have the same thing that we had in here. So let's just go ahead and copy that, paste it in here, space this out. Else, we're going to have an h1, or not h1 this time, but it will be a div with a few class names. So the first one will be width full, or full not fill, text of center, background will be secondary, rounded will be large, and then padding of 4. Instead of the div, we're going to have an h1 with a class of text 3XL, font bold, text of background, padding top of 4. And in here, we're going to have the blog.title. Under that, we're going to have a div with a class name of margin top 2 and then padding of 4. And here we're going to have two different paragraphs, with this one being the blog content. Here we're going to have text sent, text to Excel, and then a text of start, and then paragraph, class name. We're going to have the same thing here, but we're going to set this guy to end, and then margin top of 8. This guy will say published with a formatted date variable that we're going to create in just a second. And then we're going to have an anchor tag in here that will have an href that will go back, and it will say back. This href is kind of going to look like a button, so we're going to set the color to be text color. Background will be accent. On hover, the background will change to primary. Hover, the text will go to accent. Rounded will be large. Padding left and right will be set to 4. Padding top and bottom will be 1. Text will be XL. Float will be right. And then margin top of 2. Now let's create a formatted date here. So we can go to the blog, copy this, go back into this file over here, and we will import moment formatted date. Let's fix this guy right here. And inside of the round brackets, inside of the page.js, we can get params, which we will be passing in here. And this will be axios.get. But we will be sending in the params. So the title will be params.title. And since the title, right, we can't have blog and then this be this space this and then so on, right? We can't really do that. What we're going to do is we're going to replace the space with the hyphen symbol. So we're going to go in here and we're going to write .replace, and this is what it would look like. So we're going to write this, and you're going to see what this does in a bit with space. And we are getting an error here, so created at. We're going to change this guy to blog.created at. So there we go. And so let's see if there's anything else we have to do. So we have to make this endpoint. This will be get. Since we have this get, it's going to get all the blogs, but we can change this to get one. So we're going to copy paste this, change this to 1, just like that. Here we're going to be getting in the data, or more like the title. And then if no data.title, then required data missing. And here the blog will be await blog.find 1, where the title equals to the data.title. So there we go. Then we're going to pass in the blog, go back in here, console log the response.data.blog, and see what we get. So I'm going to copy this actually, go to blog, and then we're going to replace spaces with the hyphen. And we're getting an Axios error. So The server responds with a status of 404, not found. And this is not get one, but just one. So let's see if that changed anything. We're getting an undefined. But to fix the error, all you're gonna have to do is change axios.get to axios.post, because when you get something, the endpoint is only expecting to send something, but when it's a post method, then it's also expecting to get some information. Now there's one more thing to do, and that's to fix the loader on the main page. I am not fully sure what that happened, so we're going to change the styles a little bit. This will change to absolute, grid, place item center, and then we're also going to set the inset to be 0. Hopefully that will help. So now we can see that this guy's in the middle, and we didn't have to change too much. So here's going to be our blogs page. Not sure why the padding top was unset here, but there it is. If we want to, we can take a look at one of our stories. Let's also make this larger. So go back to the blog right here. If you want to, you can make a separate component for this, which I am not going to do. But let's change this guy to be 4XL, maybe even 6XL. So my little story, change that to 5. And then for the content, this guy will be 4, maybe 3. Yep, change that to 3. This guy will be maybe 2XL. Same goes for the link. So we're going to change this guy to text to Excel. And if we really want to, we can also add an HR. A few basic classes of, let's just say, border ascent. There it is. Let's add a margin bottom of 2, maybe even 4. And then here we'll remove the margin top of 2. So there it is. Of course, you can customize this however you want to. And I know I already said this before, but this website is just to show you how we can combine our knowledge of backend with databases and actually make that stuff work. And again, if we want to add anything, we can go in Postman. We're going to go to add, go to body, raw JSON. We're going to set the title to be something, and then my content. So the title is going to be, let's just say, my morning routine. And here you would have your whole morning routine, which we are not going to write all of it, but let's just copy and paste that twice, send it. Now it should be at the very top. So my morning routine. And if you do want to, what we can do is limit the amount of characters so that they do have to actually press on read more to open this guy. So if we really want to do that, we can go back in here, go to the blog. So right over here, page.js, or not in here, in the components blog page.js. And then we're going to limit it right over here. So wherever it says content, we're going to write .substring. And we can go from 0 to 50, just like that. And then we're going to write ... And this is what it's going to look like. And you can also have an anchor tag in here. So ... and then have the link over here too. So read more, right? So it would look something like this. You can also add some classes. So I'm just going to go and actually copy and paste it. So go back in here, I'm going to copy and paste the classes, or not the classes, the whole anchor tag. And this is what it looks like. So read more. And so this is going to be the end of this video. So if you enjoyed learning how to use Next.js with Mongoose and MongoDB, and you want to see a video like this, so if I go to my projects, I have created a Better Notes app. So it's kind of like my Keeper app for Google, but I have created it by myself. So if we want to, we can sign up. So the username, let's just say web dev with Ron, email, just going to copy this, paste it in here. Password, I'm going to set this to 123. Let's say I haven't confirmed it, press on sign up, it's going to say this, and then it's going to say all fields are required. So I'm going to write something random here, and then it's going to say passwords do not match. So it's like a cool feature. So I'm going to press on sign up, it's creating an account. And now if I use this, so webdevwithron@gmail.com, the password was 123. I can press on login, and for some reason I feel like for the Gmail, I haven't even put the full Gmail there, so there it is. You can go ahead and actually write a note, content, it's going to save it over here. You can make as many as you want, of course. Let's get another one. If you want to, you can go ahead and delete it. It's going to go to deleted notes. We can add it back, so it would go back in here, but we can also permanently delete it, and then it's not going to stay in the database anymore. And then you can also create a note from here and then save. It's going to be saved over here. And of course, you can delete all of them with one click. And you can also sign out if you really want to. So of course, this is also a pretty basic website, but there's a lot happening in the back end. So if you want to see a video on how to create this notes clone, then let me know down in the comments below. But this is where we're going to end this video, so I really hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, then make sure to leave a like, subscribe to not miss upcoming content like this. Comment down below if you have any questions or if you have anything that you would like to say, and hopefully see you in the next video.